to the NTSA. Karibu sana. Let's begin with that particular area, the Salgaa Black spot. It's being called the highway of death. What's being done?
Yes, indeed. Thanks a lot, Willis. Salgaa is one of the areas we've noted for quite a while that it's an hazardous spot. What basically that means is that an area whereby over time we've noted increased rate of road traffic crashes around there, and which results into fatalities, injuries, and even property damage. So that is a particular stretch. Salgaa itself is one of the areas which we've noted that it's about 20 kilometer stretch right from a place called Kibunja to around Salgaa area. It is an area which is a descent, a continuous descent of road, and you'll find that many people, as they descend that particular road, they tend to speed. And other vehicles as well, is for the vehicles which are ascending that particular steep, then because of the ascent, we have the heavy commercial vehicles, and what happens is that you'll see some other vehicles tending to want to overtake as they go upwards. So basically around that area is we've noted the increase, and of course the unfortunate incident whereby 12 passengers aboard one of the PSV vehicles died. It's an area which we are trying to work together with the stakeholders, including the road authorities, the Ministry of Transport, the National Police Service, to see how we're going to increase, or rather increase the safety around that particular stretch.
What are some of the things maybe that you are suggesting to the stakeholders to increase the safety, like you said?
Yes, some of the things we're suggesting, or we've actually done one of the audits around that particular area together with Kenya National Highway Authority, whereby we identified some of the risk factors around that particular area. One of the main risk factors around that particular area is the fact that people don't obey the laws and they speed. So that's one. Two, you realize that most of the vehicles coming downhill, especially the heavy commercial vehicles, have a tendency of freewheeling as they come down, and once you freewheel, then it becomes excessively difficult to control the vehicles once you have gained some momentum. Three is that you find around that particular area is that there's also some areas where people hawk around the road, and this encroachment of the road, including some of the people selling their wares in the middle of the road. Definitely one of the other risk factors, especially at night, is that the place is not well lit, and in that case then it leads that people do not see what is going on. So basing on some of those risk factors, and the other thing is that the number of vehicles, especially the heavy commercial vehicles, as they go up, at times they stall because of either wear, and then they are parked by the roadside. And when you park some of those vehicles by the roadside, then it becomes a risk, because once some other vehicles may just get to know that they are getting there within a very short notice, and in that case then they ram into some of those vehicles. Then definitely the human aspect, the human behavior aspect that we've around that area, because of the stretch and because of the mix of the road whereby people are going slow, there's a tendency of some of the motorists to overtake. And if you see the whole stretch of that area is basically a big length of it is a yellow continuous line. What that basically tells you is that you are not supposed to overtake. You're supposed just to follow, but with that it creates a lot of impatience because of amongst other people, so they tend to overtake. So based on all that, some of the things we'd want to work around there is basically one, the all aspect to do with the human behavior, whereby we're sensitizing the motorists that this is a big stretch, a long stretch, which is an hazardous stretch. That is one. Two is that we'll enforce so that, and we have as NTSM most of the time a speed check around that particular area, and together with the police to ensure that people do not speed. Three is that we are working, and you probably saw it, my Director General saying that we are lighting around that place. So those are some of the things. Then we are working towards long term, whereby we would want to see at appropriate time we separate the lanes of the people coming down and going up, and that is what they call separations of the people going outbound and inbound, so that the risk of head-on collision like it happened for that particular crash is reduced.
Some people reacting to this story on social media are talking about putting more speed bumps. Do you think that will help in that area, or it will
Yes, the speed bumps. One is it does help, and indeed there are speed bumps around that particular area. If you check right from Kibunja all down, we have number of speed bumps around there, and if you check the statistics, in as much as the number of crashes in the recent past, of course, like just the last 2 days have been high. If you compare it way back, the numbers have actually, from our statistics, have come down, but still that risk aspect around that particular stretch still remain. So putting the speed pumps I've actually checked, because it reduces that particular aspect, but it is not, it's one of the temporary, considering this is a class A road which is supposed to be transporting goods from and people from point A to B across even the country, because that stretch falls on what we call the Northern Corridor. It's a very important corridor for the Republic of Kenya and even the countries within the region, and in that case then we need to balance out the aspect of not putting so much, and that all brings the whole aspect. Remember that in as much as big pumps have done, up to in excess of 80%, 85% actually of crashes is the human component. Yes, so the human component, speeding, drink driving, and among other things. Yes,
and of course we hope more is done. I mean, people, even like you said, the human aspects as well, they become more careful in that Salgaa Black spot area.
Yes.
Yesterday, this accident happened the same day. I think you guys we were celebrating or commemorating Victims' Day. And what are some of the gains? Because people are interested in statistics. You mentioned that in that particular area, because of the interventions for you and other stakeholders, you know, it has become the statistics in terms of the deaths have been reduced. But what about nationally? What are we looking at? And like the pedestrian deaths, and most people, when they think of NTSA, they think of alcohol blow. So what are some of the statistics in terms of drunk driving or driving under the influence? Have they reduced as well?
Yes, you started asking about yesterday was a special day for the Republic of Kenya, and indeed for the road safety fraternity, and indeed everyone, because road safety is a shared responsibility. We had yesterday was the third Sunday of November, and that day is set aside by the UN General Assembly as World Day of Remembrance of Road Traffic Victims. As a matter of fact, so for your viewers, Willis, is that in excess of 1.2 million people die every year globally. That's a huge number, way exceeding malaria, way exceeding TB, and many others. So what that means is that this is a big problem. We are talking about 1.2 lives. That translates to about 3,500 deaths every day in our roads. And if you put it in a different aspect, so that your viewers should see, is that translates to about 10 plus jumbo jets crashing and killing all the occupants in it. So this is a huge problem, and those are just deaths. If you heard about the injuries at global scale, we are talking about 50,000 plus, about 5 times 50 million. So that's a huge number, and many, of course, property damage, economic losses, and all that. So at global scale, the UN General Assembly sat, and then we said, then they passed this as a special day whereby we commemorate the victims and families and those ones who have died and those ones who are alive. And that was an event we had in Karai, in Naivasha. And of course, you remember Karai, about a year ago, we had also another last crash. But that aside, on the aspect to do with World Day of Remembrance, of course, so we did have that day yesterday. It's unfortunate that when we were doing that particular event that morning, a few hours too, we had a terrible crash in Salgaa, which claimed those number of lives. But that notwithstanding, we want to call everyone to play their rightful role, because we believe road safety is not an NTSA affair, neither is it a government. It's everyone, including the media, play a very significant role. So back to what you said, what are our achievements? Indeed, we've had a number of achievements ranging from the reduction, like we've reduced the number of fatalities in the last 1 year. You're talking about 10% reduction of fatalities compared to the previous year, and to us that is significant. And if we maintain that particular rate of reduction of fatalities, then by the year 2020 we should be able to achieve 50% reduction, because that will be about 4 or 5 years down the line. That translates to achievement of what you call the UN Decade of Action, whereby from 10 years since 2010 you're supposed to reduce fatalities by 50%. But what we are saying is that the numbers we still have are still unacceptably very high. One life lost is not just a statistic, it is a her family, it's a breadwinner, it's a human being, and in that case, it's not something we wish away and we celebrate, but we say that we celebrate with caution that indeed still lives are lost, and those lives are very special in as much as there's a reduction of the same. But on top of that, if you check number of other initiatives we've done, is that we've done some other initiatives including more sensitization of the people. We are coming up with the driver license. You've heard of the smart driver license, whereby we'd want to work around the human behavior, and the driver is one of the biggest contributor of the road safety aspect in the road, all because they play a very significant role in the people who are driving, and a number of other initiatives which include the pedestrian fences which have been put around Nairobi. As a matter of fact, this is a significant increase, and I would like to take this opportunity to say thanks to the citizen media, rather the royal media services, for the role they play putting the pedestrian fence. I'll just quickly touch on that. Nairobi is one of the areas whereby we've had about when NTSA came into play, 75% of fatalities in Nairobi have been pedestrians. It's me and you walking on the road, not being in a vehicle. It's the mama mboka on the road, the children crossing the road to go to school, and many other people who do their daily chores by the roadside or going to work and you know, trekking from point A to B. Why that happens that the whole system around road safety has been something which has not been done for quite a while. So we are trying to put those ones into, you write it, so to speak, you know, right. Put them, and in that case, one of the things that we increasingly making the roads for pedestrians safe, and working with our partners, including the corporates and citizens, have come quite big time in this aspect, and we're putting in excess of several kilometers of pedestrian fences. And what that means is that we are going to have the pedestrians funnel them to cross at specific points, whether they are footbridges or zebra crossing, and that has done a lot, so much so that we are talking about reduction of fatalities in Nairobi from the high of 75% to now 65% and going lower. And this is something which is massive. Very simple things, very straightforward, very simple interventions, but they do wonders. And we'll be calling more as we move towards other counties, and as we also do the remainder of part of Nairobi, working in conjunction with the county governments, all in Nairobi and elsewhere, and corporates, the media, the operators to work. So at least as with NTSA being in play, and of course you've noted that there's increased enforcement activities, speed and all that. So we do have a lot of significant changes, and including the digitization of our system. So currently you can apply for your driving license from your home. You can register your vehicle from your house, you know. So these are some of the initiatives, huge initiatives which are going on. But on the bigger aspect is that we're working towards reducing the fatalities and injuries and economic and social losses due to this particular scourge.
And also, you know, just since we have you here, and you know, all the good work you're doing, notwithstanding, what are some of the roads that are still, you know, dangerous? What are some of the black spots that people can be wary of, especially as they approach that area? Just take that extra sort of precaution.
Yes, indeed, yes. We have a long list, not a long number of spots. I may not mention most of them, and I'll be calling upon. Soon we'll be releasing a report which shows the black spots. We've worked with some of our partners, and we've basically mapped out some of the black spots, especially along the northern corridor, and we're talking about in excess of 100+ stretches which are not, I would say, hazardous. And some of them, of course, you're talking about the northern corridor, right from Mombasa to the border of Kenya to Uganda, is that we have a number of such. Of course, Salgaa is one of them. There are some places in Naivasha, Karai around there, Kinungi stretch, some place called Salama around Mombasa. We go towards the central Kenya. We're talking about some place around Meru there. There's a stretch going down to which has been known to be hazardous, and a number of others. But we'll be putting that in our website at the appropriate time, whereby we'll be listing some of those. But that said and done, I think I'll be every road have the potential of being hazardous, because it depends on how you ride yourself or how you drive. The road can be as good as good as it is, because and yet they still get crashes, because what has happened over the recent time, because of the huge government initiative which is for improving mobility and transport, is that roads have increasingly become smoother, have become longer, and that in itself is very good. But on the flip side, we've noted excessive speeds around some of those highways and roads, and we've even seen some areas whereby you naturally would not expect, but because the people think that the road is smooth, that translates to safety, not necessarily. So in that case, then we've seen some of the roads increasingly becoming black spots, or increasingly becoming high risk, as they say. So as I said, as a word of caution, there's no road which can be said to be 100%. It's a mix of events around that particular road, because if you drink and drive on a road which is smooth and with nobody at all, you still find yourself, because of the human aspect to it. So all these things come into play, and I just want to add up some of this, that is, of course, December is one of the areas is coming quite soon, and we've noted in the recent past, historically, that number of road crashes have been increasing because of excessive travel of people and all that. And you'll find even, and of course with the weather of late, which has been raining, it gets in other areas misty and foggy, the roads get slippery. So we'll be calling upon, and I'm calling upon the members of the public, the motorists, the road users in general, to be careful as they do that particular, as they go for their holidays, or as December approaches, yes.
With that, I'm going to also ask you, just there are some, what I would like to call, quote-unquote, new age problems, like on Twitter. There were some questions also about these new LED lights that people, whenever they are what we call pimping the rides, or making their cars, look more fashionable, if you like. They had these new LED lights, and people are complaining that sometimes, as if it's at night and the vehicle is approaching you, your vision is blurred. Is that something that you guys, NTSA, will be looking into? Which has been brought to your attention?
It's been brought to our attention. We are very much aware about it, and it is something which you're working to reduce by enforcement of the same. But more importantly is to ensure that people take their responsibility as they do this. One thing I'll tell you is that part and parcel of our work as NTSA is the issue to do with motor vehicle inspection, and there are very clear guidelines of what a vehicle is. People have a tendency of pimping, as you say, or adding up some innovative ideas on them, innovative creations in terms of gravity, in terms of the light, and all this. What you are saying is that some of them, of course, are wrong. That blinding light, whereby at times you follow a vehicle from behind, and some light just, you are in a different world, because you can't see beyond the reflection, or rather the light emanating from the other vehicle. That is definitely wrong, and it's not something which, if we of course get some of those vehicles, and we've impounded a number of them. But the problem every time is that these people, whenever we get them, we discuss with them, they agree that it's indeed wrong, and at times even pull down some of those things, but the following day they put them back. It's something which becomes a cat and mouse game. But I think that is not the solution. The solution is people to take responsibility, and we're asking people to tell us some of those vehicles. And indeed, we have what we call an app in our NTSA website, and you can actually download it in your phone and report some of those cases, and we follow them up. And we'll be calling, of course, the members of the public, including the media. While Lagos Citizen will run a program, and we'll be seeing how we can provide, because it's quite fantastic. Some of these things whereby the community polices the people who provide them transport, and it needs to be safe. It needs to be something which it cannot be a cause. So that indeed wrong, including other things whereby the fair noise pollution, whereby people modify the exhaust pipes, some excess blaring sounds of the horns, and many others, and excess gravity which hinders the vision. Because if you put your gravity, say for example, on the windscreen, until you don't see this a small stretch, it becomes because you cannot see as you drive. So those are some of the things. In as much as innovation is encouraged, it should be within the law, and the PSV regulations and actually the Traffic Act is clear on what needs to be done on the vehicle for whatever purpose.
All right. Yes. All right, so let's say a big thank you to Duncan Kibogong, who's the Deputy Director of Road Safety at the NTSA. And like you said, you know, we'll continue to work together. And at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of everybody to make sure that the safety is upheld, of course, on the road. Thank you so much for making time.